Hi there, this is Jen, and thank you for stopping by the YouTube channel today. Today I'm going to be working with the Catherine Pooler stamp and die set called Roses Are Red, and I really wanted to use my Copics and not ink these stamps up, so I'm going to be doing a fun technique with these, but this is the stamp set. It is very clearly marked how to layer them. There's just a solid and then there's a detail stamp, so it's really easy to whatever method you choose to use these, it's really easy to figure out which goes with which. So I'm going to go ahead and do this. I practiced a little bit with this to make sure that I could make the roses and make them clear enough where they actually look like flowers. But basically I have a stamping block and I have one of these set of roses. I have the solid piece on one side of that stamping block and then the detail piece on the other. And I am taking a Copic marker and I am coloring directly onto the stamp. Now, if you don't want your stamps to be stained, I would recommend using a different method to color them up. I just thought I would do something a little bit different. It looks almost watercolor-ish in a way, and so I think it turned out really cool, and this was super fun way to use these stamps that isn't the traditional inking these stamps up with ink pads, although those are beautiful as well. So basically I'm using two different colors on these first flowers, and I'm using RV42 and R05 in my Copic Ciao markers, and I'm taking the brush part of the brush end of the marker, and I'm inking up the detail portion right now, and I'm just putting that at an angle almost flat against that stamp and just rubbing the marker across the stamp, and then I'll go ahead and stamp right over the solid image that I've already stamped up. I'm going to go ahead and take all of the flowers. I believe there are 4 flower sets in different sizes in the stamp set. And there are also different leaf variations as well. For all of the leaf stamps, I didn't use the detail portion. I thought just using the solid part on this worked well for me. But I will say that the ink dries fairly quickly on top of the stamp. So that's why the first 2 didn't come out real well, because I was kind of busy. I would ink up a little bit and then I would go find another color and add that, and the ink had already dried, which gave I still end up using these though, because I think it gives it kind of a little bit of an artsy look, which I actually like. But when I went ahead and I inked up the solid piece, I found that I really liked the way it looked when I just took the marker and kind of did a circle from the very center of the stamp and then kind of circled around outside. I think it gave a really pretty look that just complemented that detail portion when I went ahead and stamped that over. So these colors are RV14 and RV06 on these flowers, and I apologize, I don't remember what colors I used for the green. One of them is G28, but the lighter colors are harder to get an impression of, and so I tried to use a little bit of the mid or the darker colors for the leaves. And then I went ahead and I took the coordinating dies and ran that through my Big Shot machine and cut all my pieces out. I made a bunch of extras, so the ones on the right hand side I am going to save for later, and then I have picked out the ones, the florals that I'm going to use on my project. So I'm going to go ahead and start working on the background. This is another Catherine Pooler stamp, and this one is called Ink Splat Background, and I'm going to go ahead and take my Versamark watermark ink and ink that up really nicely. And then I'm taking a white piece of a 4 1/4 by 5 1/2 cardstock, and I'm going to place that right onto the stamp and then just take my hand and smooth that out over the stamp to get a good impression. I might use a stamping platform for this if it was more of a detailed stamp, but since it's kind of like an ink splatter background, I don't really need it to be a perfect impression. And once that is inked up, I'll go ahead and grab some white embossing powder and cover the image, and then take my heat tool to melt that embossing powder. And then I've grabbed this older Catherine Pooler die, and I am going to do a little bit of ink blending behind it. And so I'm taking a pencil to mark the area because I want it to go a little bit outside of the circle, but I don't want the entire area covered with ink. So I'm going to grab this Tiara color from Catherine Pooler. It's kind of a yellowish color. I wanted it to be a little more of a cream color, but it ended up, and it might be because I have a little bit of yellow ink left on my brush, but it is more of a yellow color compared to what my swatch is anyhow. So I'm just going to keep blending that ink out with my blending brush until I have that area that I marked off with the pencil covered. And then I'm going to take that die piece, and that's going to be the backdrop for my flowers. A lot of times I feel like I need something to ground, especially, you know, small flower pieces like this, unless I'm just going to cover the entire panel with the flowers. And so that's why I chose to use the die to set the flowers on. And once I have that arranged, I'm going to take the handy dandy helpful tool from the kitchen, the press and seal, and I'll go ahead and push the sticky side up against that paper, and then press down to make sure everything is secured. And I found it easiest with this because there's a few different layers of the kind of the flowers and the leaves overlapping. I found it easier just to take some double-sided tape instead of picking each of the elements up and gluing it from the backing piece or that circle piece. And so I took some double-sided tape first, and then I went ahead and I added some liquid adhesive, and then I'm going to flip that back over and add that right over that ink blended area. And once I pull the press and seal up, I'm pulling it up slowly so that I can add glue to the pieces that lift up, because not everything is going to be secured because I have not, there are places where the adhesive did not reach. Just because of, like I said, the way that some of the stuff is layered. And so I just fixed that by just pulling up those pieces and adding a little bit of adhesive behind them, and then removing the entire piece of press and seal. And then just to make sure everything is secured really nicely, I will take a stamping block and set that over the panel while I go ahead and stamp up the sentiment. And the sentiment I'm using for this card just says thank you, and I've gone ahead and inked that up in some VersaFine black, and then a fussy cut that out and added a few sequins, and that's going to finish off my card for today. This was a super fun technique to play around with, and I'm gonna have to find some other stamps that I can do this with as well. So I hope you had fun with this video. If you did like it, please go ahead and give a thumbs up. We would love it if you would subscribe to the Scrapbook Pal YouTube channel. We've got lots of fun tutorials for you, so I hope you go ahead and click that subscribe button. That is it for me. Thank you so much for hanging out with me today, and I hope to see you next time.